She is the daughter of a count, whom her father does not know about. He is a slave with a bloody past. Their destinies were not destined to cross, but one look changed everything. Secrets, betrayals, forbidden feelings. Will they be able to save each other? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to see the continuation. Etienne, have you ever heard the legend of the bird that came from hell itself? It's a creature from an old book my grandmother used to read to me when I was a kid. Its body is as black as night, like a raven's, and if you catch its gaze, it will pull out your soul, leaving you empty. Perhaps this is the point, Etienne. That moment in the corridor, when our eyes first crossed, changed me forever. It washed away everything familiar, turning my life upside down, leaving behind peace and quiet. I think that's when you took my soul, Etienne. In the very north, among the mountains, there is a small town called Regvel. Today, in one of its houses, something suddenly broke the usual silence. A commotion began. An excited voice came from the back of the room. "Masa, hurry! Father is almost here! We have to hurry!" Masa calmly replied that there was no reason to worry. She was capable of creating such beauty that all the girls in Regvel would simply fade into the shadows. The girl picked up on it. "My father has traveled all over the world, so I have to be the best of all, special, so that he remembers me at first sight." Masa laughed, her laugh always sounding melodic, but sometimes with a touch of irony, as if she knew something more than she was saying. With a slight smile, she said, "Forgive me, but I can't help but feel happy looking at you. Not so long ago you were a little child, and now you are a real lady. Are you really so happy about the Count's return?" The girl's cheeks were warm, and she could not hide her excitement. The wait for her father's return lasted forever, because he had promised to bring her a gift. This thought warmed her every day. "I wonder what he will bring. Maybe a new dress, or maybe a book. I would be happy if it was some interesting story. Although, maybe he has no idea what I really want. But no matter what, I'd be happy with any gift," she thought, dreaming aloud. Her name was Joanna Eugenia, the Count's daughter. She had always said that she did not like excessive flamboyance in her outfits, but today she wanted to look her best. What if her father finally saw her as more than just a girl? Masa, her faithful companion, sincerely tried to encourage the young lady. She considered Joanna to be an exceptional beauty without a shadow of a doubt, and although she could not always agree with these words, they lay on her heart like a warm blanket, calming her and giving her the feeling that she was not alone. Listening to the praise, the girl turned away like a child, embarrassed. "Come on, I feel so ashamed every time you say that." But Masa just smiled, as if she knew more than she was saying. But then the maid said something completely different. "Sometimes I fear that the day will come when you will meet your true love, and some noble marquis, perhaps even from a faraway land, will offer you his heart and hand in marriage. You will go away, and I will stay here. I can't sleep at night without thinking about it." Joanna realized that there was a lot of truth in these words, but she was still only 16, too young to think about such things. Besides, would any of the nobles even pay attention to the daughter of a count from a small northern town? "Rustic, you say? You should be proud to be named Yevgenia," Masa said with a slight reproach. But before the words could melt into the air, a familiar, slightly heavy knock sounded outside the door. Joanna's heart fluttered. It seemed that the Count had finally returned. The girl jumped out of her seat, and she was overwhelmed by an ambivalent feeling of joy bordering on anxiety. Seeing her father after such a long time apart was both a blessing and a challenge. Joanna rushed to the window, her eyes eagerly peering into the dark silhouettes of the forest, and through the branches, she finally saw a familiar carriage making its way to the manor. When her doubts were cleared, and it became clear that it was indeed her father, the girl spun around as if in a dance and asked breathlessly, "How do I look?" This was her 10th question, and her 10th patient, beautiful from Masa. "Please, tell me honestly," Joanna persisted. "I know you say you're nice because we're friends, but at least for now, don't pretend. After all, I am your mistress." Masa replied seriously that she would never lie in such a matter. After all, the young lady was her mistress, and a lie in this matter would be not just a mistake, but a real crime against trust. In addition, Joanna was in charge not only of the maid's fate, but also of the entire town. Rahway, though small, had something magical about its simplicity and comfort that made it a real home for everyone who lived there. Masa said with a smile, "So why worry? You must appear before the Count with your head held high. You remember the special gift that awaits you, don't you?" At these words, John's face flashed with light, as if a star had shone in the night sky. How could she forget? She was overwhelmed with joy. Without wasting a moment, she quickly got ready and almost ran downstairs to meet her father. But as soon as she stepped out of the room, she was confronted by her brother. His dark, heavy gaze instantly darkened the mood in the house that had just been created. Joanna shrank back and looked down. She was afraid of Eli, even more than she was afraid of death. Her joy disappeared in an instant, and this was nothing new to her. Meeting her brother at an important moment was an unfortunate habit of fate. Eli Eugene, the heir and deputy count, looked at his sister with irony. "Are you going to greet your father with that expression on your face? You are the epitome of a constant headache." Embarrassed, Joanna tried to explain herself. She hadn't expected to see her brother here, so she just mumbled an apology. Eli just huffed. "This is my house, in case you forgot. And you're the master's daughter, so you should know when he's coming home. Your excuses are as useless as you are." Masa knew the truth. Eli spent more time in amusement centers than at home, even though he tried to look like a model son. When their eyes met, she immediately bowed her head. Masa was well aware that one mistake and her life could end in an instant. "What's that on your head?" Eli snapped disdainfully. "You won't get asked to a dance, let alone a wedding. And this is what you call a festive outfit? You'd better tell your father you didn't have time to get ready for his arrival." These words were particularly painful. Joanna got up before dawn to make sure she looked perfect. Masa even washed her hair with fragrant oils. She tried so hard, but why was he always so cruel to her? Her hands trembled whenever she had to talk to him, and she couldn't help it. But at that very moment, Count Twain appeared on Eugenia's doorstep. He threw over his shoulder. "Isn't anyone meeting me? You could have waited in the hall instead of making a draft." Ioana's heart was racing. A smile came to her face, and she ran to her father, overwhelmed with happiness. But Eli was the first to arrive. He stood between her and the Count and said, "Welcome back, father. How was your trip? Has the business in the capital been completed?" His insolence knew no bounds. He knew how to hide his cruelty under the guise of civility. And the worst part is that he took pleasure in the pain of others. Why didn't her father look at her? Why did he not say a word? Why did he speak only to Eli, as if she did not exist? But the girl did not give up. She came closer and spoke timidly. "Father, I'm so happy that you came back safe and sound." Her quiet, touching voice echoed through the room, leaving behind an awkward silence. The Count did not even look in her direction. He simply remained silent, as if she were a piece of furniture. Twain Eugene, a respected count, was constantly on the road. His duties took him from city to city, country to country. For him, home was just a dot on the map. "I want to get some rest," he said, unbuttoning his collar. The journey was exhausting, and the bumpy ride was uncomfortable. "By the way, did anything happen while I was away?" Eli, as usual, seized the moment to present himself as the perfect son, the guardian of the house, the vigilant overseer of the estate and all the affairs. Once again, Ioana could not say anything. Her thoughts were torn out. "Massa told me not to worry, but I messed up again. Why does it always happen to me? Why does everyone talk to me as if I were a shadow that cannot be seen?" Suddenly my father spoke. "By the way, Joseph, bring him here. He will be living with us from now on, and he needs to be introduced to the family." Everyone instantly turned toward the Count. A new member of the family? What was it? Perhaps it was a cute little animal like a rabbit or a kitten, or even something more exotic like a goldfish or a small puppy. It was indeed a gift. There was no doubt about it. But what kind of gift was left to guess? Hearing this word, Joanna exclaimed inwardly, "He remembers. Father, you have not forgotten." Joseph pushed the stranger forward. The boy glanced around the room, met John's eyes, and then looked away as if afraid. "Who is this?" The girl stared at it intently, trying to understand what kind of gift it was. It was obviously not a pet. In the corner stood a young man her age, wearing dirty, tattered rags, with wounds on his body that silently testified to his past. Ioana looked him up and down, trying to make sense of her father's decision. Had he lost his mind? But suddenly she saw the mark. 2 rings surrounded by rays, the mark of the slaves of the Caspian Empire. Everything became clear. A slave? In their house? Did my father really bring a slave home? What was he thinking? That's absolutely ridiculous. Her eyes, clear and transparent, like the nightlight, intersected with his burning bright red like hot coals. "It's like blood. It's just horrible," she thought, and turned around, heading for her room. "I wonder if the bird in my grandmother's legend had the same eyes." Eli wrinkled his nose in disgust. "What is this stench? Even the gutter smells better. And who is this guy?" The Count took a drag on his cigarette, blew out the smoke with a smile, and said, "We will wash him, and he will be as good as new. I can see through people at a glance. I think this is a brilliant solution. Eli, you've always wanted a brother, and Joanna needs a friend her own age. The girl did not rule out that she could get along with this guy, but there was something sinister in his eyes. He looked at her as if he wanted to destroy her. It was not the gift she had expected. What was I hoping for, stupid me? She whispered, and disappointed, went to her room to digest the new reality. The Count ordered Masa to wash the boy and clean him up for dinner. He was to sit at their table, but time was running out, and it was a question of whether she would make it. At the time, she had no idea that this unkempt stranger would be both her greatest blessing and the worst gift of her life. In the room, she began to replay the moment of her meeting with her father in her mind. He hadn't looked her in the eye once during the entire encounter, and when their gazes did cross, he pretended not to notice. As if she were a ghost, a shadow from the past that cannot be called by name, that cannot be addressed. It was painful. After all, she, like every child, wanted one thing: love, support, something she had always lacked. She recalled running down the hallway as a child, happy, carefree, and accidentally bumping into her brother. When she hit his shoulder, she fell, small and frightened. But Eli didn't bat an eyelid. He was indifferent. There was neither compassion nor fear in his eyes. It seemed that even if she had died, he would not have stopped. Without a shadow of hesitation, he swung with all his might and kicked his younger sister in the face like a dirty rag that had accidentally gotten in his way. His shout broke the silence like thunder. "How many times have I told you to stay out of my sight? You have soiled my shirt. How do you live on this earth?" Joanna, pressing her cheek, began to apologize in a trembling voice. She did not understand why, but she knew that apology was the only thing expected of her at such moments. The thought stuck in her mind like a sentence: if you are too visible, you will be punished, so it's better to keep quiet. Better yet, don't leave your room at all. Before he left, my brother threw one last poisonous line. "Your voice makes me sick. Your stupid hairstyle, that fake smile. It's because of you that Mom died." These words became a hammer that smashed something fragile inside her. Something delicate and precious in her soul cracked. She couldn't explain what it was, but she felt that something was broken forever. One day, Joanna approached Masa with a strange question. "Aunt, do you think I am not a human being, but a ghost? Or an evil spirit who killed my mother long ago?" Masa staggered, her breath caught in her throat. How could such a wonderful, bright child think such things about herself? The assistant rushed to the girl, hugged her tightly, and spoke. "What are you talking about, miss? It's just that Mr. Eli is at a stormy age. He will be different. Believe me, in time he will become a worthy leader." She sank down on the couch next to her and gently put her hand on Joanna's knee, giving her the warmth she needed. "And the wound in his heart will heal too, you will see. He will look at you and remember his mother, because you are so much like her. Look at you. How beautiful you are." These words were like a warm ray in the cold darkness. For her, the Mass was the whole world, hope and hopelessness, silence in the midst of a storm. But even that kindness could not heal her completely. For somewhere in her heart, she no longer believed, even though she wanted to. When dinner came, the newcomer was seated at the communal table. Eli couldn't help but laugh. "Really? You want this? To eat with us at the same table?" The Count gave his son a piercing look. Eli, even under his father's gaze, could not hide his indignation. Sitting next to a slave was a humiliation for him. "The higher the status, the more dignity you should show to those who are lower," the Count said, exhaling the smoke. "By the way, how does your old baby shirt fit? Not bad, eh?" Joanna was not listening. Her attention was focused on the boy. His body was covered not just with scratches, but with real traces of torment. It hurt him even to sit. He would not be able to swallow anything. The boy suddenly looked up and looked directly at her. His red pupils blazed with a silent challenge. Confused, she immediately looked away. What is wrong with him? How can a slave stare at a noblewoman so brazenly and so insolently? Eli, of course, could not keep quiet. "Why aren't you eating? You're not going to tell me that you're going to ignore our generosity, are you?" The guy seemed as empty as a shadow. His eyes were fixed on the bowl of food, but he did not even move. However, he knew better than to eat, despite the pain, than to get hit in the head again. His hands trembled as he reached for the knife and began to slowly cut the meat. But suddenly something changed. The plate disappeared. Joanna took it away in a flash, and the boy did not even have time to realize what was happening. She calmly swapped their dishes, placing a bowl of liquid soup in front of him instead of meat. With a cold smile, she threw it down. "Eat this. Did you really think you had the right to touch such expensive food? Don't even try. Noticing the boy staring at his plate in confusion, Joanna mentally scolded herself. I am a complete fool. This was not like her. Something inside her clenched as her conscience painfully reminded her that she had just humiliated someone who had already been destroyed by the world. Come on, eat! Just start eating and don't look at me like I'm another chain around your neck. The boy meekly began to eat the soup. It was obvious that the liquid dish was much easier for him to eat than the heavy, fatty meat. If he hadn't eaten anything, his brother would have kept up, and the show would have started. It's better this way. Let him eat at least a little, thought Joanna, watching him. Eli, meanwhile, kept his eyes on her. Noticing the change in her face, he smiled slyly. Then, unable to restrain himself, he added, For a woman, Noroff is too stubborn. By the way, father, where did you get this slave from and when? The Count slowly reached for his glass and began his story. He said that the fog that day was so thick that you couldn't even see your fingertips, a real white veil. The coachman almost hit someone who was just sitting in the middle of the road. The guy was seen at the last moment. I'm a sensitive person, the father said with a sigh. I couldn't leave the kid in the middle of the wasteland. It would have been inhuman. Joanna listened to this with internal skepticism. To her, it sounded like the plot of a cheap play. She knew perfectly well that her father simply could not resist the opportunity to get cheap labor. She did not intend to offend him, and she did not dare to contradict him. But indignation burned in her heart. How else could she have reacted? Eli, not hiding his disbelief, said, What if it was a trick? Maybe he threw himself in front of the wagon? Poor people have their own methods. Begging for alms, playing the victim. It looks too convenient, if you ask me. The boy was silent. He just sat there, concentrating on his fingers, as if he was afraid that a word or a movement would be the last one in his life. Keep an eye on him anyway, said the Count, though he is silent, and that is why I like him even more. He is obedient. Eli smiled. Maybe he's not so useless after all. Who knows what he can do for us? He doesn't look like an ordinary vagrant. He probably had a family once. The Count got up from the table and rubbed his temples wearily. Excuse me, I will go to rest. It has been a long day. No one said anything. Only silent glances accompanied him to the door. Joanna looked at the boy again. At least he had eaten. In his condition, with those bruises and swollen face, that was an achievement. But her heart clenched again. Eli gave the slave a look filled with venomous curiosity. There was nothing good in that look. He slowly reached for a glass of red wine that sparkled like a ripe pomegranate, and with demonstrative ease, he poured all the wine directly onto the boy. His shirt, hair, pants, everything was covered with the precious drink, which was instantly absorbed into the fabric. For the guy, it was a moment when his whole life seemed to flash before his eyes. The hatred in the air was so dense that you could cut it with a knife. Eli laughed, and playing with his glass, said, Look at him, John. He's a wet rat, not a man. Where can he be a nobleman? Joanna was frozen. She could not even move. Her heart was clenching with disgust, not at the boy, but at what was happening. Did Eli really find pleasure in this? Did he find it funny? His soul is like a dark abyss. There was not a shred of warmth left in it. When he finally straightened up, he said mockingly, You're a bit sluggish today. You're not laughing, are you? It's strange, because I tried so hard to entertain you. With a sly sparkle in his eye, Eli called Jonah over. He had what he called a brilliant idea. Joanna almost flew out of her chair. She knew that if she disobeyed, she might feel his foot on her face again. Just like when she was a child, she was trembling. She stood before her brother as if in front of a burning fire, waiting for the next order. You're 16 now, he said in a tone of instruction, and it's time you learned how to treat servants. Here's a slave. Go on, kick him. What? Did she hear me right? Was he serious? If the father saw this now, he would stop his son's entertainment forever. Everything in her chest felt tight. Her principles, her inner code, everything screamed no. She could not step over the human, over herself. Yes, the guy had scary eyes, but he was a human being, and he remained so despite his wounds, dirt, and stigma. Come on, don't drag it out, Eli hissed impatiently. Show him where he belongs. It was worse than any beating. It would have been easier for her to endure pain herself than to inflict it on another, but she gathered herself. She clenched her fist. A storm was raging inside, but calm and determination was on the outside. She quickly approached the boy. He did not move. His face expressed neither fear nor pain, only a kind of boundless, deep disappointment. Leaning toward him, she whispered, Listen, I'll just pretend to hit you, and you're going to fall, okay? It sounded incredible. A young lady, A noblewoman asking a slave to play a play with her? Weren't they all like Eli? Lifting the hem of her dress, Joanna looked down one last time to make sure she was sure where her foot would fall. The heel lightly tapped the leg of the chair, and it fell to the floor with a thud. The guy fell in after him. His wine-stained shirt and tangled hair had already become a familiar part of his image. Joanna flinched. She did not intend to hit hard. She just didn't calculate the strength. Everything looked painfully plausible. Eli stood behind me. His eyes burned with a predatory fire. He spoke with the same malicious mockery. "Look, you're not so hopeless after all. You seem to have some experience, huh?" His words sounded as if he had been running them over and over in his head, like poison that had long been ripe in a bottle, waiting for its time. The boy lay on the floor, his skin feeling the coolness of the parquet. He closed his eyes. Patience was all that remained. But how much longer? But who was he before all this? When his world disappeared, when only the road and the fog remained. Urtek Empire. Etienne Bernhard is the second son of Prince Bernhard, a boy who grew up in palaces, among silks and sunshine. His whole life was a complete harmony, until one day nothing was left. But even in the palace, among the silk walls and love, life seemed too predictable for him. Prince Bernhard's family had 4 children, and there was a touching harmony between them. They all grew up as one soul. No one intended to fight for the title. It was obvious that the oldest would become the heir. It was natural, and no one objected to it. One evening, little Edwin, the youngest of the brothers, asked Etienne cautiously, "Do you remember the first time you fell in love with someone?" The question took me by surprise. How could such a small boy have such deep thoughts? Or maybe someone had appeared in his heart, Edwin answered with a flame in his eyes. "I think I've met her. Her eyes are like ice water reflecting the sky. I have seen many eyes, but this is the first time." Looking up at the starry sky, the boy added dreamily, "Her hair is wavy and soft, like chestnut silk. If the fairy Smilax lived among us, she would look like this." Etienne bombarded him with questions. Where is she? What does she look like? When did they meet? But deep down, he was just happy. Seeing his younger brother shine was happiness. However, when the conversation turned to details, Edwin shrank back and tried to change the subject. Meeting the girl was still too personal for him. Despite this, the brothers remained in good spirits, sharing their thoughts and laughing. It was a warm day, and there was no threat, until the night came when the world collapsed. Etienne ran down the street without looking back. Behind him, he heard voices. "Look for him! Blonde hair! Red eyes! Don't let him get away!" That was the beginning of a nightmare that was no longer a dream. It was only a continuous running, only a desire to escape from the grip of the unknown. And again, the memories. Little Edwin lay on the floor, choking on blood. His words were a whisper from the abyss. "Run. Run away. It's my stepmother. She put something in the food." Could it be true? Was the woman who smiled so softly at dinner capable of poison? The kind of poison that kills a family? The perfect picture of the family disappeared like a paper castle in flames. In a second, everything was gone. His world no longer existed. You have to survive. Don't give up. Live for us. Start over. Start happily. Don't die. From a noble title to a brand on the wrist. From the princely throne to the slave corner. Everything collapsed at an unprecedented rate. Edwin's blood stained not only the floor, but also his hands. The pain that remained was unbearable, and it would stay with him forever. They all died. All of them. And Edwin died in his arms. With a broken heart, eyes blurred with tears, Etienne ran away. He ran like a shadow, without direction. Only away. He stopped only when the shore of Havana opened up before him, where one story ended and another began. The world has lost its meaning, remember this. And it was at this moment that his eyes rested on a large ship, heading for the Caspian Empire. Etienne sold everything. A jacket, a shirt, even his underwear, just to save up some money for food, for the road, for a chance. He bought a ticket for the jacket, and for the jewelry he bought some bread and a bottle of water. The ship set sail and remained on the open ocean for several days, far from everything he knew, far from home, which was no longer home. When the boy finally set foot on the land of the Caspian Empire, he did not hesitate to change his appearance. With the help of a witch, he changed the color of his hair as he erased the past that burned in him with a burning flame. Of course, he could have stayed on the ship for a few more days, hiding among the shadows, but the thought of spending the rest of his life like this made him squirm inside. It was eating away at him like a parasite, slowly burning away at his soul, while others saw him only as a slave, dirty, silent, emaciated. Etienne's rage boiled inside him. He never stopped running through the crowds, through the suffering, through the desire to take revenge on everyone who had ruined his life. Thus, over time, the prince's second son began to lose even the remnants of his dignity. His faded clothes, hungry eyes, and stooped posture, in a foreign country that was nothing to him, he became nothing. Eventually, he was brought to the estate of Yevon's family. There was no room for him in the house, so he was sent to spend the night in the barn. The dry, prickly hay tore at his body even through his thin clothes. Each straw cut like a cold needle. Lying down on it was like falling on thorns, but even worse than the pain was the cold. Piercing, merciless, bottomless. It seemed that death itself was hiding in the shadows, waiting for the moment when he stopped breathing. In the darkness, Etienne silently asked for forgiveness, for all the insults, for all the empty quarrels. He would have given anything, even his life, to have Edwin laughing again somewhere near him. His life was worth much more than that. The door creaked open, and a girl entered the barn. She was wearing a nightgown, a headscarf, and a basket in her hands. She approached him cautiously, as if she was afraid to scare him. She stretched out her hand to touch him, to check if he was still alive. But he opened his eyes. He instantly grabbed her wrist, peering into the darkness to see who had dared to approach him at night. The basket fell from her hands. The bread and apples rolled on the ground. Their eyes met. John. Etienne. What does she want here? Did she come to check if I was still breathing? With apples, really? He thought. She picked up one of the apples, wiped it on her dress, and handed it to the boy, as if nothing had happened. Her eyes shone with such quiet hopelessness that he froze, without realizing why. At first, he just looked at her, surprised, as if he were seeing a person for the first time. But the thoughts poisoned my heart. She pisses me off. She looks away as if I were some kind of dirt, trash. His heart clenched. He didn't need her pity. He had never asked for sympathy. He did not want to be weak in her eyes. How much longer will she see him as helpless? This is not help. This is humiliation. From the very beginning, it aroused contradictory feelings in him, and among them was indignation. Suddenly, he grabbed John by the shoulders and pressed him sharply. In one motion, he threw her to the ground, hovering over her. The coolness of the damp floor touched her back, as cold as the evening itself. His voice, hoarse but firm, cut through the silence. "You're very mistaken if you think I need your pity." His words were full of pain, despair, anger, and resentment. He did not expect help. He could not accept it. But perhaps this reaction was not against John, but against himself. Joanna rushed out of the barn, barely holding back her hair and clothes, which were flying off her body. Inside, she was screaming, "What is wrong with him? Has he gone crazy or what? I came to save him and he attacked me. I shouldn't have helped him at all." Now she blamed herself for showing him even a drop of pity. At the time, Etienne was sitting under a rough basket cover, with apples and pieces of bread lying around. He didn't move for a long time until he realized that the girl had run away to the mansion and locked herself in her room, as she was supposed to. He may have gone a little overboard with the threats, but he didn't care. He didn't plan to stay here for long. "Don't give in to this feigned kindness," he muttered to himself. "You know how it always ends." As he stood up, he felt something softly hit his leg. It was an apple. It was the first meal he had eaten without being closely supervised by one of the Yevonians. The boy carefully examined the fruit, as if looking for something suspicious or traces of poison, but finding nothing, he carefully bit into it. Meanwhile, my father was talking animatedly with one of his acquaintances, apparently about the circus in the Urtek Empire. Etienne heard a fragment of a phrase. "I'll have to see for myself what's going on there, and it wouldn't hurt for the local aristocracy to remind themselves of themselves once again." When the Count returned, he noticed that the boy had become more tidy and looked much better. "It was not for nothing that you were brought to Regvel," he said. "Always obey Elijah. He is the eldest, the future earl after all." His gaze was cold and stern. There was no hint of paternal care or mercy in it. Joanna watched in silence. She was still offended, thinking Etienne was simply crazy, and did not want to say a word to him. Why does my father talk to them more often than to me? It's so annoying, I can't even imagine, she thought bitterly. After his father left, the yard was silent. Eli stared silently into the distance for a few more seconds, as if he were thinking about something. He was going to go out for some fun, and turned to his sister and said, "Sit here quietly. No tricks, okay?" Suddenly his gaze settled on the slave standing behind him. Without hesitation, he slapped him across the face and said, Yes, I am talking about you, you weak creature. Why does he always attack him with his fists? Doesn't he have anything else to do but hit a defenseless man? Listen carefully, Eli said. I don't even want a pig like you for free. Remember, every time you get in my face, you'll get a kick, and it will always be like that. They went off in different directions, leaving John in the middle as an outsider, an unnecessary third. She was convinced that after such humiliation, this man would hate her family and she would be driven out of the house like a madwoman. Masa said, Don't forget to rest. By the way, did the young man go to Heibel? He's off at it again. How can a count go to gambling houses? Managing a territory is not a game, but a huge responsibility. However, Joanna was convinced that the management of Regvel was the responsibility of the entire Eugene family. She could not afford to sit idly by just because her brother was absent from the estate. Massa remained silent, although she thought of the late lady, and her heart trembled at the resemblance she saw more and more clearly in John. The assistant came to the door and said, Madam, I have to go out on business. Just please, if anything happens, do not come near this red-eyed slave. Joanna didn't understand why Massa had suddenly brought up the subject. She hadn't really been focusing on the guy, just doing her job. Had something really happened? Massa replied, Nothing happened. It's just that I get goosebumps every time he looks me in the eye silently with his red eyes. It doesn't make him a bad guy, but... The girl shuddered. She was ashamed to even think out loud in this awkward situation. However, Massa continued, In any case, don't you dare look him in the eye. You remember the story of the bird from hell, don't you? With that, she left, leaving John alone with his own terrible thoughts. Joanna spoke softly. If Massa had known what happened last night, she would probably have fainted immediately. John said, Unable to speak a word, the slave with red eyes. Wait a minute. Yesterday, this guy said he didn't need her pity. She had definitely heard him say that. It couldn't have been delusional. Is he really talking? Oh my God, why didn't she realize this before? Joanna rose from her chair and exclaimed angrily, But he can talk! What does it mean that he has been leading us by the nose all this time? How dare he deceive the owner of all Regvel? Well, now he'll get it from me. And for yesterday's words, too. Etienne stood in the field near the estate and thought, My head is still spinning. What a bastard. It's better to be on the run forever than to get hit in the head all the time just for being you. Maybe I should just run away. Suddenly, he heard a scream somewhere nearby. It was Joanna. Her expression made it clear that she intended to act. She said, Hey you, stay where you are. I'll be right there. It was strange. Usually, slaves are called to, not approached. This girl didn't seem to realize how much power she had. Joanna shouted, Apologize immediately. You can talk. You lied to us. I tried to help you, and you just humiliated me. How did you even have the nerve? You're a slave. The girl felt his gaze on her again, the same deep, piercing one that seemed almost hypnotic. Something was wrong with him. He was not what he seemed. Joanna did not stop. Do you think you can frighten me with that look? No way. Go ahead and apologize, or you'll be in trouble. But suddenly, her foot hit a branch that was lying right below her. The next moment she fell, hitting the ground hard and seemingly twisting her ankle. The guy looked at her anxiously and asked, What about you? It was a complete disaster. Everything fell down like a stone into a deep, dark well. It was a real shame for Joanna. She was shaking with fear, as if she were a small child helpless in the face of her own defeat. She was also unable to get up. The pain was so severe that she could not even move. Etienne stood in front of her and looked at her in surprise, as if trying to understand what was wrong with her, but also confused and wary. But in a moment, he realized that the girl could not get up on her own. The guy squatted down and held out his hand, silently hinting for her to climb on his back. His gaze no longer seemed frightening. It was now sympathetic, soft, almost human. Joanna was amazed. A boy who was supposed to be a slave offered her this kind of help instead of submission. But entrusting the body to a stranger, a slave at that, seemed like sheer madness. What if someone saw it? What to do? Should I climb on his back and let him carry me home? Or should I refuse and stay here in pain? What if he throws her into a river somewhere? Whatever the risk, there was little choice. The best thing to do was just accept the help and get home. She crawled cautiously to him and grabbed his shoulders. His embarrassment was felt even from the back, so Etienne decided not to hesitate and deliver the girl as soon as possible. He threw her on his back, hugging her under his knees, and moved forward. Joanna couldn't help but be surprised. The skinny-looking guy was much stronger than she expected, lifting her up as if she weighed nothing. As they walked, she thought, My brother will say something like, Are you so helpless that you're dating a slave? You are a disgrace to our family. Or maybe he'll hit me. It's embarrassing. I'm not a child anymore. They moved around the estate in silence, not saying a word. Suddenly, Joanna noticed a scent. It smelled much more pleasant than she had expected, even too pleasant. Soon they reached the room and carefully slipped inside without anyone noticing. Massa heard a voice behind the door. "I told you, I can do it myself. You're doing a great job. By the way, where did you learn it?" It was Joanna. Massa came in to find out who the girl was talking to. When she saw the slave in the room, she almost fainted. Massa screamed, "Get your hands off her quickly! What's going on here, ma'am?" She shouted so loudly and sharply, spewing insults, that Joanna was stunned. The girl said, "He was just helping to bandage my leg. I injured it while walking." Massa screamed again, "And all this in my absence? He did not do anything wrong to you, did he? Do you know how many slaves insult noblemen's daughters?" Joanna tried to explain that he had done nothing wrong, and she was sure that he could not have done such a thing even in his thoughts. But the more Massa talked about the danger, the deeper this confidence grew in her. The next day, the girl secretly watched Etienne as he cleaned the barn. She was standing quite close, so she could see his every move. But it seems that she was not the only one watching him. He also felt her gaze on him, although he pretended not to notice. He was a little uncomfortable. Is it so hard to just say hello or catch his eye? What an absurdity! Suddenly, a girl came out from behind a tree and said, "I have come to thank you. Thank you for bandaging my leg. Thanks to you, it will heal soon." Did Joanna really thank him? It was so unexpected that Etienne involuntarily froze. He had not expected such a reaction from her. The girl thought, "And who is he really, this guy? I feel like talking, but why is it that I'm the only one doing all the talking?" She put her finger up and said, "Let me tell you something. I personally came to thank you. And now it's your turn. You don't think I've forgotten how a worm like you dared to throw me to the floor, do you?" She poked him vigorously in the chest with her finger, expecting an immediate response. Etienne was at a loss for words. It was a strange sensation. Instead of a blow, it was a soft touch. For the first time in his life, someone touched him not to hurt him, but simply as a gesture. The conversation was unavoidable. He turned away and tried to collect his thoughts. Joanna thought, "Aha! Finally, he is afraid of me!" But as soon as he started to answer, she immediately interrupted him. And then she said, "Well, you don't have to worry. I didn't tell anyone anything. And if I had, you would be dead by now." Meeting with a slave at night, and a male one at that, was not only dangerous, but almost illegal. Joanna turned and left, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Etienne smiled softly, but said nothing. Instead, he slowly put his hand to his chest and bowed politely. At that moment, he had nothing of a slave in him, only the posture of a true aristocrat. The boy said quietly, "Forgive my rudeness, ma'am." His voice was calm and soft. The first time in all this time that Joanna had heard something like that from him. She blushed, unable to contain the wave of internal embarrassment. It was too pleasant and unexpected. To hide her emotions, she said, "There, that's different. That's how it should have been from the beginning." But in her mind, she couldn't help but notice. What? Did he just call me miss? He was hysterical in the stable, like a madman. What has suddenly happened to him? Joanna laughed, laughing to herself at how it all looked from the outside. Etienne's face twisted slightly, as if he wanted to laugh too, but held back. The girl said, "I'm not a vindictive person, so this time I forgive you. But don't wait for the second time. And why are you making a face, huh? Okay, you asked for it. Now I'll teach you a lesson." I wondered what she had in mind. Etienne didn't even move, just stood there silently watching her. Joanna recalled how her brother said that he did not need this slave, and only beat him, enjoying the humiliation. Suddenly, an idea popped into her head, and she immediately voiced it. Coming closer, she said, "From today on, you will be my personal servant, and you will obediently do everything I say. Do you understand?" It sounded bold, just taking over a slave like that. She certainly didn't look like the kind of person who would do that. However, when he looked at her, it was almost impossible to take his eyes off her. John gently touched his sleeve and pulled it down, revealing his wrist with the sign of slavery. She smiled and walked quickly forward, pulling him with her as she said, "I will show you Regvel." They arrived at a waterfall, a large, impressive one. The air was clean and clear. It had been a long time since Etienne had breathed in anything so real. The city lived its own life. Birds sang, and people planted crops right in their yards. Soon they came to a field with no horizon in sight. Above it hung the sky, covered with thick fog, and it was truly magical. Joanna noticed the smile on the boy's face and said to herself, "Wow, can he really do more than just get angry?" And then she turned her gaze back to the field. Very soon they moved on, admiring the new landscapes that opened up on their way. They visited many places familiar to Joanna, and every time she looked not at the scenery, but at him, at his reaction, at his smiles, which appeared more and more often. My beloved mom, something incredible has recently happened. My father brought a slave from the capital. He was about my age, had bright red eyes, and looked very different from the others. Masa forbade me to even talk to him, afraid of his eyes, which were like those of a bird from hell. But I am the owner of all of Regvel. I have the right to do what I think is right. Why should I be afraid of a slave? Suddenly, Joanna ran up to the tall rose bushes and wanted to pick a flower, but Etienne gently grabbed her hand and gestured to her to be careful. She understood him without words and smiled. The guy said, "Wait here, I'll be right back," and went into the bushes, leaving the girl waiting. He held out a rose to her, so delicate and beautiful that it seemed to have been created especially for John. There was so much delight in her eyes that he was ready to get hurt by the thorns a dozen times just to see that reaction. He picked a flower and injected himself instead. A few days have passed since the scene with the rose. The girl exclaimed, "Let's bet which one of us will be the first to reach that mountain." She was waving her arms so actively that Etienne simply could not keep up with her gestures. But as soon as the boy saw the mountain, and Jonah himself, everything became clear without words. His face showed fear, the same fear that appears when you look at something that scares you to the core. But this was the least of her worries. She said, "Ready? Ready, set, go!" They took off running like mad. It was unbearable for Etienne, as fatigue was clutching his body, and this girl seemed to have an endless supply of energy. They reached the foot of the mountain and fell into the tall green grass. They lay there for so long that they could only look up after they had caught their breath. The girl said, "I have won!" Now all this was beginning to resemble not the life of a slave, but the role of a toy for girls' games. He was used as they wanted, but not for his intended purpose. The sun was shining brightly, so brightly that words seemed superfluous. I just wanted to lie there and look up in silence. John stretched out his hand toward the sky and said, "In this place the sky stretches all the way to the horizon." She looked with delight at the clouds, at the sun, at the endless clear sky, and he was looking at her. His gaze slid over the waves of her brown hair, over her ocean-colored eyes, over her delicate skin. Something about her made him look again and again. Suddenly, she turned her head and their eyes met. Blue eyes. Etienne said in his mind, "Her eyes are like the blue sky." Count Eugene. She would have been strange for a countess, even very strange. In front of her father and brother, she behaved modestly, almost exemplary, especially during their first meeting. His instincts immediately told him to be on the lookout. This was not the first family he had ever entered so unexpectedly. At first glance, he thought that this girl was a quiet and reserved person, but now it turned out that she could run as fast as she could, lifting her skirt up to her knees. He remembered her feeding a wounded dog. This was also important. She did not shy away from things that disgusted other noblewomen. She also always took a long time to choose things. Every little thing, every ribbon had to fit her look perfectly. Sometimes, she would make delicious sandwiches and share them with Etienne as a thank you for something she couldn't explain. It was impossible to control her. She lived as she wanted and did as she wanted, where she wanted. Once, while reading a book, she asked, "Are there really animals with such long necks? Books only tell the truth, don't they?" She was saying something else when she suddenly heard a strange sound. Without hesitation, she ran to the window. She saw her brother's carriage outside the window. Drops of sweat immediately appeared on her face. Everything became clear without words. Eli had returned. She never wanted him to find out about her friendship with the slave. That would be the end of it. She turned to Etienne and said, "Quick, hide!" Her frightened face left no room for denial. She quickly shoved the boy into the pantry and closed the door. Before that, she said, "Don't even think about leaving here until I come, understand?" A voice came from behind the wall. "John, where are you? Will you not even come out to meet me?" And then, "Where the hell were you?" And immediately, the sound of a blow. I wanted so badly to rip out that damn pen and punch Elijah in the head to beat him to death, but that would have been the biggest mistake he could have made. My legs were twisting from exhaustion, my hands were trembling, and a wave of nausea was rising in my chest. It was hell. Hearing screams, hysterics, the sounds of blows and things smashing on the floor. Later, Eli was sitting in his office and said, "I've heard rumors that you've been getting along well with our slave lately. I'm not surprised. Now I know why you stink." Joanna stood with her books above her head. Her face was covered with deep scratches and dark bruises. She said quietly, "He was just doing his job. Besides, he doesn't smell that bad. He washes himself every day." Eli would not listen. He hit her again and shouted, Don't you dare argue with me! Why are you defending him? Are you in love or what? The pain in my fingers was so intense, as if they were being twisted with screws. It was impossible to bear it. The girl cried out, "Of course not! By Saint Diana, I have done nothing shameful." Eli grabbed her chin roughly and stared into her eyes. She couldn't even move, fear stiffening her entire body. The boy said, "Of course I didn't. Otherwise we would have been in big trouble. Your face is the last thing left of our family. You and I have to find favorable marriages, do you understand?" He shouted that the only way she could help her family was to marry a rich nobleman. He let her go and added, "Now do you understand? Go to your room, learn to embroider or whatever you do there, and put on your makeup at last. You're useless." Etienne sat there, listening to every sound. His conscience was eating him up inside. He had failed to save his own family, and now he couldn't even protect them. He was angry with himself. If anyone here is useless, it is he. The next day, John came to him and said, "There you are. I have been looking for you. I want to go for a little walk. You will be my escort." He looked at her scratched face and could barely contain his anger. He wanted to scream, to tear up everything around him, to run and kill Elijah, but he just swallowed the pain. The boy said, "I smell like sweat. I think you should stay away from me until I take a bath." Joanna glared at him angrily, and then she said, "What has suddenly come over you? Don't think that your brother is saying anything. You don't have to wash your face if you smell. I don't care. No one comes to visit me anyway, so what does it matter?" Her words sent a chill down his spine. Why was he still here? Every day he spent planning his escape. Etienne said, "If that is your wish, I must obey. I will be your escort today." The gentle smile on her face instantly lifted his spirits. She looked so warm and alive. Joanna said, "It is boring to stay at home all the time and be bored. I know. You will pick me roses again. There are some beautiful ones growing over there." Etienne began to look into the distance, trying to see the same rose bush. But their walk had long been observed by someone else, a man who seemed to be an assistant to Yevon's family, usually engaged in important matters. His name was Joseph, although no one knew for sure whether this was his real name. He suddenly grabbed the girl by the arm and roughly dragged her to the basement, hidden behind an old shed. The girl cried out, "Let me go, Joseph! Hey!" Her anger was obvious, and her voice was too loud. She screamed again, "What are you doing? Have you forgotten who I am?" The dark and dank basement was the last place she wanted to stay. Joseph looked at her with that strange sympathy in his eyes that was already a betrayal. Why had he done this? The man spoke softly. "I apologize, ma'am, but Mr. Eli's orders are higher than yours. I am only following orders." The door slammed shut, and an oppressive silence ensued. Inside was nothing but rotten boards, old stones, and dusty sacks. At the time, Eli was talking to Masa and said, "Didn't you hear me the first time, Masa? Lock her in there for 3 days. Give her only bread and water." The assistant tried to convince him, asking him to take pity on the girl, as it could harm her health. If Joanna gets too nervous, things could end tragically. In that damp darkness, she might not even survive the first night. Eli came closer and said, "Mother, you do not forget who is the master of Regvel, do you? You are just a maid, and I will make you unemployed in a moment." He threatened without a single drop of pity, to put her out on the street, to leave her without shelter, without a single chance. There was neither honor nor shame in his voice. All Masa could do was obey, for if she had objected, it would have been Joanna who would have suffered, not her, and she could not allow that, even at the cost of her own dignity. Her face suddenly turned pale. Iji saw a slave standing by the window, as if waiting for something. His calmness was unbearable. Now Masa hated him as much as she had ever hated anyone in her life. She wanted him to disappear. When their eyes crossed, Etienne immediately realized that he was about to fly, and hard. Masa took off running. She screamed, and the next moment she was flying toward Etienne as if she wanted to kill him with her bare hands. She was screaming, "It's all your fault. You have no conscience at all. Because of you, the lady is in the basement. It's your fault, do you hear? It's your fault." Grabbing him by the shoulders, she began to shake him like a doll. Her eyes burned with rage, and no one in the house doubted that he was the one to blame. But suddenly, the guy started repeating the same thing. "It's my fault. It's my fault. It's all my fault." He said it over and over again, and the further he went, the more it started to scare him. Masa froze. She tried to understand what was happening to him. It was as if his thoughts were stuck, like a broken doll, jammed. Masa's mind replayed a memory, a conversation with Joanna that had taken place a few days ago. "I thought I told you not to get involved with that bird from hell. If rumors start, then..." But Ioanna cut her off. "Stop calling him that. You can't judge a person by their appearance alone. He is a very nice boy. He listens to what I have to say and is always ready to play with me." Masa remembered how the young lady had always spoken warmly of him. Her words left an impression. If not for John, she would not have looked in his direction. Masa could not understand what Miss Yevgenia saw in this boy. Red eyes, a frightened look, hands shaking as if in the cold. He was completely shackled. But now is not the time to think about it. There are more important things. We need to act. We need to help. Masa had only one request. She knew that turning to a slave was the best way out, because he himself dreamed of helping the girl and getting her out of the basement. Meanwhile, Ioanna sat alone in the darkness, gloomily staring into the void. The world slows down in loneliness. She began to notice the smallest things, even the most insignificant. For example, an ant carrying something home. The girl whispered, "Such a small thing, but how much perseverance it has. I bet his life is more important than mine." Suddenly, a loud roar cut through the silence like thunder from heaven. The girl shuddered. It had been absolutely silent before, so silent that she could hear an ant moving around. The noise was getting louder, louder, and scarier. She saw the crossbar and whispered, "I think the sound is from there. What if there's an animal down there? Maybe there's a passage down there." She slowly crawled closer and peered through the tiny hole under the bar, trying to see something, and then she froze. A black hand slowly emerged from the darkness, sooty and dusty, like the hand of a demon crawling from hell itself. It touched John's hand. Her heart was torn out of her chest. Fear paralyzed her. She saw nothing else, only that hand. In a moment, everything went black. She fainted and fell to the stone floor, showing no signs of life. Etienne came out of the passage, shook off the soot, and called out, "Madam, madam, wake up!" She barely opened her eyes. She thought she was already in the other world. She did not even realize that there was a passage in the basement. The boy said, "The governess told me about it. She is very worried about you, so she asked me to help." When Ioanna crawled carefully back to the passage, she saw a narrow tunnel and a long ladder. There was so little room that she immediately realized that this was why Masa would not have been able to get through. It looked almost like a miracle. Etienne suddenly coughed, cleared his throat, and drew attention to himself, adjusting his voice to a serious conversation. Sitting down across from her, the boy said, "Madam, please forgive me, but from today, I will no longer be your servant." Wow! What kind of statement was that? John could not understand why the servant had suddenly decided to refuse to serve her. When do slaves ever make such decisions on their own? The girl said, "Why all of a sudden? Did I do something wrong? Or are you tired of following me all the time, running around, fooling around, laughing? If it's too much, just say so." He knew it was not about her. Joanna was wonderful, kind, sincere. The problem was something else entirely. However, he replied, "Not at all. You are very kind to me and I appreciate it, but I'm always causing you problems. It is better if we limit our communication." For Miss Yevgenia, this seemed absurd. She was sure that she was locked up not because of him, but because of her stubborn brother, for whom her word had no weight. Etienne said, "Madam, I am only a slave. I'm not even allowed to speak to you openly. This is not forgiven." She listened intently, watching his face, his gestures, his tone of voice. The boy continued, "If a disgusting rumor spreads that you have become intimate with a slave of the opposite sex, the noble families will pick up on it instantly. They will shout about it at every turn." Ioanna looked at him in surprise. He spoke as if he had lived his life in the skin of a poor aristocrat. The guy cleared his throat and said, "Anyway, I don't deserve to be treated like this. From now on, please treat me like what I am, a common slave." It was painful, so painful that it seemed like the world was falling apart again, and her heart was falling with it. She exclaimed, "So, for you, my brother's word is more important than mine? Or am I not aristocratic enough, and therefore you do not want to serve me? I really believe that you could have been my family, my real family." Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she didn't even try to wipe them away. The scars that were hidden under the bandages were quite clear, reminding her of every blow she had to endure. Etienne said, "What is this nonsense?" John cried out, "You brute! You arrogant, insolent, haughty slave!" Etienne rose to her level and raised his voice as well. He demanded that she hit him, called him names, yelled at him, treated him like a slave owner should, because she had never been able to do that before, so she would learn now. The boy said, "Call me a coward and a dirty slave, and then tell me to get out of your sight. Say it." Her face showed real, deep fear. She was so scared that it was hard to imagine a worse day than this. She was not going to beat him. She wasn't going to humiliate him. Emotions were raging inside her, but she had to stop it somehow. Why does she have to say this at all? Why insult a person who is innocent? Why is he so eager to be expelled, to be thrown out, through the same back door that he came here? Did he really want her to stop talking to him, playing with him, acting like a sister or a friend, laughing with him, or even thinking about him in passing? Joanna screamed, "I told you no. Do you want me to be like my brother, who injures people for no reason? I will never be like that, and if being a noblewoman means being like him, then I don't need titles or honor." Etienne was at a loss for words. He could not believe he had said it to her. Perhaps he didn't mean to, but the words had already been spoken. The girl was screaming, and pain was pouring out of her. For the first time in her life, she experienced a real hysteria, the kind that overwhelms you, and at the same time, she was able to tell someone everything. Suddenly, her throat felt like someone was squeezing it from the inside, her breath came out, and her whole life flashed through her mind. The guy looked at her and tried to understand what was happening to her. When he realized what had happened, he screamed, "Shit, she's suffocating!" Rushing to her, he knelt down, forced her to breathe through her nose, close her mouth, calm down, and inhale deeply, slowly. Her breathing gradually steadied. Etienne didn't leave, stayed by her side, held her, and watched her every breath. He hugged her, tightly, with all the warmth he could give. No matter the rules, this was their own world, their own truth, whatever it was. Joanna thought, living in the residence, I constantly felt pressure in my chest. Sometimes it was hard to breathe, not for the first time. She continued to think, it's interesting that the one who was most persecuted for his smell smells like dried leaves and warm summer, as if I were somewhere in the forest. Finally, I could catch my breath. They sat in silence for a long time, ignoring the night and everything around them. It was just them. She was the most important thing. Her eyes, the color of a spring sky, her brown hair, her touch and breath. Etienne knew it wasn't supposed to be like this. Life was supposed to be different, and he was supposed to be different. Holding the girl close, he thought about how soft and warm she was. He liked feeling her close. Her cheeks were still burning with excitement and unhealed bruises. He thought, how could you lay a hand on such a defenseless child? What kind of a bastard does one have to be? Night covered the land. John fell asleep. Of course, the conditions were far from ideal, but we had a blanket, and that was something to be thankful for. The guy handed her a loaf of bread and offered her a snack. She just turned away and sniffed her nose, making it clear that she would not eat. Then Etienne asked if she wanted at least some water. The girl exclaimed, "I said I don't want anything from you. Who asked you? You are not even my slave." It was strange to hear this. After all, he served not only the Count, but the whole family, and he had the right to worry about his mistress. The girl exclaimed, "You talk too much for someone who pretended to be mute." "That's it," I said. "I won't die without food, and I'll lose weight at the same time." When he heard the words about weight, the guy barely restrained himself from making some inappropriate remark or ill-timed compliment. Etienne said, "Madam, you said you wanted to have a real family. Imagine that you are now fulfilling your second older brother's request. An older man? No, it couldn't be. They seemed to be the same age, but the guy insisted that he was a year older. It looked ridiculous. The girl replied, "Even if you were older, I would still not eat. You don't even have to offer me water." Etienne didn't understand why she was arguing so fiercely. Even if he pushed her away, that was no reason to refuse to eat, was it? John whispered, "It's not about you. It's not about what you say." God, it was so hard to admit it. The girl said, "If I eat, I will want to go to the toilet." The guy replied, "You don't have to worry, I'll clean it up." This was what she feared the most, that a boy older than her would also clean up after her. It seemed terribly humiliating. She stood up abruptly to scream, but Etienne quickly shoved a piece of bread into her mouth so that she could eat something. Then he added with a sly smile, "If you keep yelling, everyone will know I'm here." This argument was in the boy's favor. She did get mad at his words sometimes, but the fact remained that the bread was surprisingly tasty. She said, "This bread is delicious." She turned away, hiding her embarrassment, but she ate the bread anyway. Suddenly, Etienne asked, "Listen, how long has this been going on?" The girl turned around in surprise, waiting for an explanation, and the boy quietly added, "Your brother. How long has he been treating you like this?" This struck him in the heart. Joanna angrily replied that it was none of his business and that he should not interfere, because friendship is friendship, and there are things that remain beyond the bounds of what is permissible, even for loved ones. A heavy silence hung between them. No one dared to speak first. Finally, the girl said, You know, I've been thinking about this for a long time. You didn't tell me your name. Can I call you something? Is she really asking if she can name her servant? Joanna continued. You are my older brother, aren't you? I'm not going to use the first name for my older brother. The girl put sincere respect in these words, but Etienne just smiled and said that she had every right to do as she saw fit. However, there was only one sound in his head over and over again, the name he had heard all his life. The last time someone called him Etienne was the day Edwin, his closest brother, died. This loss left a deep gap in his heart forever. The boy said quietly, I am only a slave. I have no right to a name. Joanna thought about it. She realized that a name is not just a sound. It is a part of the soul, she said. You don't need permission for a name. It is given at birth. Everyone has a name. Do you want to be called a bird from hell? Etienne suddenly laughed. Quietly, not loudly. But the girl was a little offended, taking it as a mockery. But the boy said, No, I was just thinking that if I had a sister like you, I would protect her like the apple of my eye. I would love her to pieces. He came so close that she held her breath. Then he said, My name is Etienne. Only you and I know that. A few days passed after that conversation. Joanna was finally released. She was sick. Her body ached from the hard boards, and the dampness and cold made themselves felt. When she finally woke up, she saw a small rose by her bed and was genuinely surprised. It was obvious that Etienne had done it. After all, they had already developed their own little tradition, a rose without thorns. Suddenly, the door opened and a boy entered the room. Joanna tried to get up to see him better, but, pretending to be asleep, she watched him stealthily, lying silently. When he turned to leave, she suddenly grabbed his arm, forcing him to stop. With a smile, she said, Have you decided to sneak into the ladies' room, you shameless man? Obviously, it was a joke, but it took Etienne a while to realize it. But her smile disappeared, replaced by a serious and slightly sad expression. She said, You know, Etienne, I've gotten used to the pain. My brother has been abusing me for a long time, but the wounds still disappear. She bowed her head and added, But something in me tells me that without you, this loneliness will last forever. Don't leave me, please. The boy carefully placed the flower in a vase that he could easily reach with his hand. Then he gently took her hands in his palms, squeezing them as tightly and carefully as if he was afraid of losing them forever. Leaning toward John, he said, I dare not go against your will. She smiled gently as he squeezed her hands. She felt a peace inside that she hadn't felt in years. From then on, Etienne never left John for a moment. Summer gave way to winter, winter to summer, and the familiar roses bloomed again in the garden. One day, Joanna approached the boy and asked him, Listen, are you sure you are 18? Because this is all a bit suspicious. It turned out that Etienne had grown so much that she had to tilt her head back to see his face. It looked quite funny, her futile attempts to reach his forehead. She sighed and said, Who cares how old you are? It doesn't change anything because you are my family. But don't forget your responsibilities, okay? The guy nodded with a smile. Everything suited him. He was happy where he was. But suddenly Joanna added, Happy, you say? So you like being with me? She paused for a tiny moment after each word, as if she were deliberately making him confused. The boy's gaze did not focus on her face. His eyes slid down to the necklace, the neckline of the dress, the lines of her body. It drew his attention in the wrong direction. The realization that he was looking at his sister's breasts was driving him crazy. He turned away abruptly, not noticing the wall he had slammed his head into. His behavior became more and more strange. He seemed to be about to lose his mind. Blood was oozing from his forehead. Joanna immediately began bandaging the wound, forcing him to sit upright and adjusting his chair like a caring nurse. Later, Etienne found himself in his father's study, where the Count greeted him with the words, Wow, you've grown a lot. Joseph told me that you suddenly spoke, but I did not believe it at first. Throughout Etienne's stay in this house, the Count had the feeling that the boy was not at all what he seemed. There was something unusual, elusive, and at the same time too obvious about him, something that could not be hidden, something from the great families. The Count leaned forward and asked, Listen, you know I was in Urtek, right? There was a real commotion there. A boy had disappeared, and by your age, you could have been him. Oh no. Etienne's heart sank. Was this what the Count was hinting at? That he was the missing heir? The Count did not retreat. Have you ever heard of Prince Bernhard? This name hit him like a whip. It was the name that destroyed everything Etienne held dear. The guy answered with restraint. I am not a citizen of Urtek. I have been a humiliated slave since birth, and have heard nothing about this. I am sorry I cannot help you. The Count smiled wryly. Well, anyway, they say they're looking for a guy with blonde hair and red eyes. Forget what I said. The truth was not in his favor. Having a silent slave was much more convenient than taking risks because of his titles, so he dropped the subject. If Etienne is silent, let him continue to be silent. Until he confesses, he remains a mere tool in the hands of Yevgeny's family. The guy quickly left the office. His head was buzzing. Are they still looking for him? Is the whole empire still on the alert for him? Katrina Bernhardt, the stepmother, stopped at nothing. She removed Edwin, his brothers, and even the head of the family, his father, from the way to pave the way for her only son's inheritance. The palace now seemed like a soulless stone shell, without the voices of loved ones, without family warmth. It lost all resemblance to home. Suddenly, screams brought Etienne out of his reverie. What am I to do with you, ladies? When you walk, the edge of your dress must reach your ankle, and you must support it with your right hand. Massa cursed at Joanna, who did not want to follow the norms of behavior. It was as if the girl deliberately disregarded etiquette, so the remarks kept coming. Although her upbringing in the spirit of aristocracy remained incomplete, she allowed herself to live in her own way with joy and for her own pleasure. Seeing the sadness on her face, Etienne thought, "Don't you dare upset my lady. I'm sick of all these Bernhards and Eugenie." Time passed, and the girl gradually mastered the rules that once seemed absurd to her. Etienne often watched her and said quietly, "Don't worry, Joanna. I am deeply indifferent to princely titles. You are my only soulmate, and I will always be there for you." One day, he walked into the barn and froze when he saw a familiar but surprised face reflecting a storm of emotions. Joanna was sitting in the corner, huddled against a pillow, and Etienne asked in surprise, "Madam, what are you doing here? This is my place to sleep. Could you please leave? I have already folded the mattress." The girl answered stubbornly. The mattress, pillow, and shed belonged to her, so she had every right to stay here, even if it was to sob into her pillow until she was sick to her stomach. Suddenly she spoke. "Few people in the residence realize it, but my brother seems to have invited someone to throw a ball in honor of my debut. Where did he get the money for that?" These reflections seemed inappropriate, since Ioannina was often considered too limited for such suspicions. Moreover, much was hidden from her. As usual, my brother was not at home. He was probably staying somewhere for the night, maybe even had an apartment in Heibel, which he did not tell me about. On the one hand, she was relieved that he was not around, but on the other hand, it was obvious that he was hiding something. A charming blonde woman with an icy expression was hurriedly approaching Eli Elizabeth de Marie, his beloved, like a snow queen. He hugged her tenderly and said, "My dear Elizabeth, I asked you to let me know when you would be in Heibel. Have you been waiting for me all this time?" She replied that at home, she could only listen to her father's preaching about Ilya's addiction to gambling and other nonsense. It was impossible to bear it. Eli replied, "I am grateful for your sincerity, but I must admit that I understand your father's anxiety. The realization that his only daughter is dating a nobleman like me." Suddenly, the girl burst out screaming. She loved him to pieces and was ready to sacrifice everything, so she couldn't think of him as some simple man from the provinces. She exclaimed, "If only I could be with my beloved, this thought alone would be enough for me to be happy." But their conversation was being eavesdropped on. Elizabeth did not know about it, but the stranger with red hair was watching every word with interest. But why? Elizabeth de Marie is the only daughter of the Marquis of the Caspian Empire. They first met a year ago when her family organized a ball. Then Eli behaved so gallantly that he was able to win her heart from the first minute he met her. He kissed her hand and said, "I am Eli Yevgenich. Will you allow me to enjoy one magical dance with you?" In his blue eyes, Elizabeth saw a depth that swallowed her up like a wave of an endless ocean. She could not imagine that men with such superhuman, almost heavenly beauty existed in the world. She gave him her first dance, and from that moment on, they began a story that was hard to stop. As if under the influence of an invisible spell, she was drawn to Eli, so she set up a cozy hut to provide a place for their secret meetings. But she was the only one who believed that their meeting was a matter of fate. The servants heard Eli whisper passionately, "I love you, Elizabeth. Kiss me, please." But it was all just theater. A red-haired assistant was already waiting for him in the carriage, and she asked him with a smile, "Having a hard day, Mr. Eli?" Eli sighed heavily, as everything indicated that he was getting tired of this game. Hugging his assistant, he whispered, "This role is exhausting. It would be so much easier if she were half as perceptive as you are." Their plan was simple: to win the heart of the gullible Elizabeth, to force her father to give in to her wishes in order to gain permission to marry, or at least access to imperial wealth. After all, once Eli gains control of the money, he can escape from the Regvel estate and establish a new empire in the heart of Habel. Later, as if by the way, he said, "Maybe I'll give you a precious piece of jewelry," and hugged the girl with a look as if they had been together for years. Their carriage moved forward, leaving behind a huge estate where something important had just broken. In a room full of anxiety, the maid tried to comfort Elizabeth. The girl cried out in despair, "He hasn't kissed me again!" To which the maid calmly reminded her that Eli had sworn not to touch her until it was official. "Exactly," replied Elizabeth fervently. "He is different, a true gentleman. But you realize that my father refused even Count Noah. He will never allow me to be with Eli." No matter how much the maid tried to convince her, it was all in vain. The girl lived in the thrall of her own heart, and even when dark rumors about Eli were mentioned, about murder, cruelty, and manipulation, Elizabeth remained unmoved. "I've heard it all," she sighed. "But Eli's not like that. Okay, so he's not very rich now, but who was born with a crown on their head? Is there even one man in this world that my father would recognize? What if I remain a doll in someone's hands forever?" she added quietly. A magnificent bouquet of lilies was unexpectedly delivered to the Regvel estate, which someone had left right outside the door. Masa approached with flowers in her hands. "These are for you, ma'am, but I don't know who it is from. Maybe it's a gift from Mr. Eli? Or maybe the Count himself decided to impress you." But did this woman believe a word of what she was saying? She suddenly snapped her fingers and exclaimed, "Or maybe some noble stranger saw your portrait and fell in love." Joanna just looked at her with irony. Could anyone really fall in love after seeing a miniature drawing of her face? Although the girl considered this talk to be utter nonsense, Etienne stood silently behind the closed door, eavesdropping on their conversation. His cold, sharp gaze did not bode well, and the restrained determination in his eyes made me wary. A large bouquet of lilies bloomed in John's hands. But before Etienne's outburst of anger, these humble flowers seemed like a trifle. The young man said, "Eli seems to be in a hurry. They say he is in debt to Count Noah. They say that he even paid for the cost of the ball. Isn't it a shame to sell your own sister to pay off your debts?" Everything fell into place. This was not a celebration in honor of the debut. It was a bargain, a real marriage contract. And although Joanna knew nothing yet, the truth would soon be revealed. Suddenly, Etienne turned pale. "Noah? Count Noah of Caspian? Wait, Pierre Noah." His memory suddenly brought up old memories from the beginning of this horror. One day, he woke up in a dark, dusty closet among boxes, with a burning pain in his arm, as if someone had just baked something under his skin. What kind of devil? The mark on his arm was blackened by a magical brand, and such marks were legendary among the people. Voices came from the wall. "Damn Pierre. He got himself into the shit, and now he's dumping it on us? Did he really think that his dark deeds would remain in the shadows?" The second voice grumbled, "If you talk too much, Noah will melt you down too. If you try to say anything, you'll disappear. Let him come with us, we'll turn him in and be done with it." A name that was painfully recognizable, like a pain in the memory. I had to remember it. Yes, that's the one. Count Pierre Noah, a new employer who profited from human trafficking and illegal substances, illegal drugs, and something even darker. Although there were terrible rumors about him, there was never enough evidence. He was too careful to leave any traces. Etienne was still a child when he accidentally came across that article in an old newspaper, but it was she who gave him the key to understanding what kind of swamp he was in. That day, he was rehearsing a waltz with Joanna, preparing for their long-awaited debut. She was completely focused, trying to learn every step perfectly. Surprised, she turned to him. "Etienne, tell me, how do you know so much about dancing, and how do you manage to waltz so easily?" The young man answered calmly, saying that he had often seen the nobility dancing at great celebrations. "Do I look naive? You don't get that level just by watching," she said skeptically. Before she could say more, however, Etienne gripped her hand tightly. The girl whispered quietly, "You know, this may sound stupid, but I think you—" But before she could finish, the man abruptly pulled her to him by the waist, and she blushed, unable to say a word. Etienne said, "Concentrate on the dance, not on the talk. This is the second time you've stepped on my foot." Her gaze stubbornly glided over his naked chest as if mesmerized. My God, how much Etienne had changed. He looked not just attractive, but too attractive, and the confidence that Joan had once had around him had disappeared without a trace. She used to wrap her arms around his waist without hesitation and press herself into him in a dance. And now he can barely say the words, because thoughts about him shamelessly swarm in his head. Turning to face him, she inadvertently stepped on his foot again. Her heart nearly leapt out of her chest, and she exclaimed, "I'm sorry, please. I didn't mean to. Tell me, are you okay?" With her hands out in front of her, she froze in anticipation of punishment, but it never came. Stepping aside, she muttered, "This is the first ball at Regvel since my mother died, and I dance like a wild bird. You can see that. Don't even try to convince me otherwise." The thought of being embarrassed in front of her family drove her crazy. Etienne gently took her by the shoulder, turned her toward him, and said, "I don't think it's dancing talent that matters at the ball." These words seemed meaningless to her, because a ball is a dance, and she must be ready if she's invited first. Etienne took a deep breath and said, "Madam, you are charming." She almost fainted. Why was she so hot at his words when everything had been calm before? Joanna tried to cover his mouth and asked him not to say it so loudly. But he just leaned over and kissed her hand like a true gentleman. Etienne said, "Do you think any man will think about your moves when he holds the hand of a creature like you?" She almost melted, as shame and sweet pleasure merged in her stomach into a single pulse that drowned out her mind. She turned away abruptly and replied, "That's not going to happen. They will still judge me harshly no matter who is in front of them." Etienne reminded her that the ball was being held in her honor and that she would be the judge. Whether the dance was elegant or clumsy, the decision would be hers. Quietly but clearly, she said, "Strange, but even though you are a slave, I don't see anything slavish in you. And you know what? You are the greatest danger to me." Coming up close, she proudly pressed her finger into his chest so that every word would be imprinted in his memory. She said, "You read, you dance. Your manners are better than those of my brother and father combined. Who are you really?" She had known for a long time that this was not just a servant, but someone extraordinary, with a past hidden under the mask of ordinariness. It was both unusual and disturbing to hear such serious reflections from a girl who had just left childhood. Her eyes, the color of pure azure, held his gaze like a captivity from which he did not want to escape. John said, "You don't have to answer because you will lie again, won't you? Of course, if I am wrong, tell me, but I know you will lie." Etienne gently hugged her and said that one day he would tell her the truth, and he would like to share it himself, but the time had not yet come. He was anxious to get rid of this burden, one of the most painful problems that had haunted him all his life. On the day of the ball, Masa went to the girls' room to make sure everything was ready for the big event. But the dull expression on Ioanna's face made her anxious. Obviously, she needed to talk to the girl. However, Masa decided to postpone the conversation as the ceremony was approaching, and Ioanna left the house, arm in arm with her brother. The crowd was frozen in admiration, all eyes riveted on her as if she were a phenomenon the world had never seen before. Her dress with embroidered patterns, long sleeves, and off the shoulder looked luxurious. She was the embodiment of perfection. Eli said, "Remember, John, you can't get back a damaged reputation." With her head down, she sadly whispered what she remembered. A stranger came out of the crowd and said, "The rumors were true. Count Eugene's daughter is truly charming. It is an honor for me to finally meet you." He bowed and added, "My name is Pierre Noah. I hope you will allow me to be your first dance partner." His gaze was steadfastly focused on her, but for some reason, it did not inspire confidence. His every move made Joanna feel as if she were being held captive by an invisible force. Eli broke the silence and said, "We are so glad you came. Why don't you say something? Say hello. Count Noah is a well-known figure not only in Caspian, but also far beyond its borders." After these words, Eli turned to his guest and smiled. And then he added, "By the way, he is your fiancé." "What? How?" Eli made an agreement with Noah to marry him, just like that, without her consent? Noah intervened. "You should not put the lady in such an awkward position. I'm sorry about that." But Eli just shrugged his shoulders, saying that he wanted to share the good news. Only for her, it was not good news at all. It was the first time she had ever seen her brother like that, as if he had taken off his mask and a completely different man had appeared before her. It was amazing how quickly he could change his face. Outwardly, Noah looked like a typical member of the upper class, perhaps even of the bloodline of kings. But was he really her fiancé? The thought of it was unbearable. Suddenly, the music started, and Eli said, "Well, the orchestra has started playing. I'm sorry, I'll talk to you later." Of course, it was all planned to the last detail, but she didn't know about it. Noah gallantly extended his hand to her and reminded her of his invitation to dance. The girl tried her best to stay calm and keep the rhythm as she had been taught. She cautiously approached the man, touched his arm with her light palm, and began to dance, gently merging with the melody. He couldn't look away. She really was stunning. Her hair, jewelry, facial features, everything was in harmony to the last touch. Count Noah said, "You dance beautifully, such grace." It was a nice compliment. Joanna thanked him and added that she had had a good teacher, so her skill was no accident. The man replied, "Well, I have to admit that I envy him, because being around you is a great pleasure." But suddenly, he noticed the anxiety in her eyes and realized that she was scared, that she felt constrained. He said, "Do not be afraid of me. I'll be honest. I fell in love with you the moment I saw your portrait. I wanted to do everything properly, but your brother was so protective of you that I could not even exchange a word with you." He also admitted that the bouquet of lilies was from him, which came as a complete surprise to the girl. He also added that in the language of flowers, it is lilies that embody John, and this makes him infinitely happy. When she finally managed to escape from the ball and stepped onto the threshold of the estate, she took a deep breath, her heart beating so hard that it seemed like it was about to stop. Noah never took his eyes off her. Even when she was talking to guests or dancing with others, it seemed incomprehensible. What did he mean when he said that she matched the lilies? Was it a compliment or a veiled hint? Joanna thought about it. The groom? So he and my brother have already decided. As usual, my father knows nothing. He doesn't care. But is Noah really in love with me? Her mind was torn by hundreds of questions, and she couldn't focus on any of them. Would she ever be able to reciprocate? No, now is not the time. I need to banish these thoughts. I need a distraction. Where's Etienne? He promised to be here. Suddenly, an alarmed breath and voice sounded behind me. "There you are, Miss Yavinia!" 3 strangers gathered around her, looking at her with interest, as if she were part of an expensive exhibition. Joanna was surprised. The girls were her age, so she said, "Good afternoon. Have you been waiting for me here?" The ladies talked enthusiastically about the house, called the style classic, looked at everything around them like crows, and Joanna, though reserved, felt pleased by this attention. They seemed nice to her. One of them asked, "The estate is beautiful, but where do you usually live? I have never seen you in Heibel, although I have met Mr. Viscount often." Joanna was confused, and it became difficult for her to find an answer. She did not know how to get out of this situation. One of them exclaimed, "Don't tell me you've been living in Regvel all this time?" Others laughed, saying that it was a wilderness, fields and boredom. How can you live here? Obviously, they were girls from influential and wealthy families. Joanna suddenly realized that she was unlikely to live up to their expectations. What had she hoped for, thinking that she could find friends among them? Joanna replied, "This is my home. I grew up here. Now I am the daughter of the owner of these lands. Yes, there are fields here, but I have been having as much fun as I can, and that's what bothered the servants." She recalled running up a hill with Etienne, and then falling into the wet grass, trying to catch her breath. Their eyes glittered with cold greed. It seemed as if money defined absolutely everything for them, and even more. The guest, whose name was Infrid, said, "Come on, why are you being so abrupt?" Joanna, wanting to end the conversation quickly, replied, "I'm sorry, I just wanted to show off my athletic ability." The conversation slowly faded away, slowly and gently forcing the guest to retreat. Joanna wanted to say something in defense of her family, but no decent words came to mind. Suddenly, a man's voice came from the second floor. "This is a family that has defeated its enemies in every corner of Regvel for generations and raised brave knights." His voice, his posture, Joanna could not look away. He continued, "By making Regvel their stronghold, this family has protected the nature of the Caspian Sea for centuries. Do the guests of the ball not know the history of this house?" He gently embraced the girl by the shoulders and held her close, and it seemed that something heavy in her soul melted away. It was Etienne. He defended her honor with such tenderness and dignity that Joan felt her cheeks flush. The guests were quick to assure, "Of course we know the story." However, their stumbling words and confused looks told a different story. One of the girls said, "Perhaps you have misunderstood us. We were just worried about Mrs. Joanna, because she must be very lonely living in the middle of nowhere." They noticed his bright red eyes. He was definitely no ordinary servant, and they all suddenly realized it. "Who are you, Etienne?" The red-headed friend whispered, "Ingrid, let's get out of here. Did you see his eyes? If you get involved with someone like that, you're in trouble." The girls quietly apologized and left, leaving Iwanina alone with the mysterious young man with the fiery gaze. It was a relief. As soon as their backs were turned to her, Joanna took a deep breath. She said, "I could have managed on my own, but thank you for your support. I probably shouldn't have looked for enemies on such an important day." Suddenly, she noticed that he was wearing new clothes, and what was most surprising was that he looked just fine in them. Etienne replied. The Viscount threw these clothes away. It was a pity, so I picked it up. They are still good. Indeed, it fit him surprisingly well. Joanna felt her face burning, so she rushed to change the subject. Although she was not from a deep province and could not boast of great wealth, it was obvious that Etienne was not who he pretended to be. As soon as he changed his appearance a little, he became someone else, someone completely different. What's wrong, Etienne? There was something about him that did not fit this rural silence. The guy approached me and asked quietly, Are you okay, ma'am? You don't look too good. His face was so close that she almost screamed, Everything is fine! I'm in great shape! Noticing her embarrassment, Etienne asked if Count Noah had said anything that might seem strange or unacceptable. Wait, how does he even know she was talking to Noah? Looks like Etienne was really keeping tabs on her. Etienne said, You were lonely, weren't you? I was there all the time, even when she was dancing and smiling, thinking that no one was around. Etienne saw everything. He was there from the beginning. This stunned Joanna. She could not even imagine that he could follow her and intervene so precisely when she needed him. He was hiding something. It was obvious. John asked, What do you think love is at first sight? Why did she suddenly start talking about love? Etienne looked at her in surprise, waiting for an explanation. Joanna continued, Count Noah said he fell in love with me as soon as he saw my portrait. I think he will propose soon. But is it possible to fall in love so easily? The girl was deep in thought, and Etienne didn't seem to care what Noah was planning. In a quiet, almost whispered voice, he asked, If he really proposes to you, will you accept? John replied, You are a fool. Who would ask me? I wouldn't have agreed, but they just made me do it. If the Count has shown interest, his brother will never let such an opportunity go to waste. Such a chance is not missed. And her father? He had always been indifferent to her fate, so he wouldn't think of objecting. Joanna was not surprised. She knew this day would come one day. Etienne exclaimed, How can you be so calm? Aren't you sick of all this? They left you here, alone. They sold you as a bargain. Don't you despise them for that? It was the first time he had ever spoken so loudly to her. His voice trembled with emotion, and he could barely contain himself. What she took for granted was infuriating. But what did he mean when he said it was sold? Joanna replied, I won't deny it. I don't like being around these people, and I don't want to spend time with them. But I cannot hate them. I cannot hate them. Whatever the case, this is my family. Sometimes it seemed to her that if she allowed herself to hate, this emotion would destroy everything that was still alive in her heart. Etienne turned around and said, There you go. Well, if you say so. His tone was cold and mildly sad, and he sounded irritated. He pulled up his sleeve and glanced at the brand on his wrist, then added, I am going to fulfill my duties. It was obvious that he was offended. The girl shouted his name, then again and again. Before he left, she asked, If I get married, we'll still be friends, right? This question confused him. He knew the answer, but it was too painful to say it out loud. Without looking back, the boy said, I will protect you for the rest of my life, for you are my lady. With a sad look on her face, Joanna went out. It was her ball. Everyone was expecting her to appear with a speech, a glass of champagne in her hand, with a smile and a dignity that would strengthen her authority. But all her thoughts stubbornly revolved around him. Why had Etienne taken offense? It was obvious that something had hurt him. But what was it? In this state, Count Noah met her and said, Miss Eugenia, you look pale. Are you all right? She flinched in surprise, but then answered, Ah, Count Noah, it is you. Yes, everything is fine. It's just that I don't seem to like the alcohol too much. The man decided not to hesitate and asked her for another dance, as she probably had nothing better to do anyway. The awkwardness did not disappear, but rather the tension between them grew with each passing minute. But Joanna did not refuse. On the contrary, she agreed. She decided that this was her moment. Somewhere in the back of the mansion was a lone window. It was unremarkable, except for the fact that it offered a perfect view to the west. It was Etienne who Etienne was looking at. He saw her dancing, watching from a height, from a safe distance. Standing by the window, he said, We would never have been a real family anyway, John. And yet, madam, every time you make me wonder. After a few minutes of reflection, Etienne realized that she was so gentle, so bright, that she could not hate her family, even if she had reason to. Her smile shone like a beam, and her snow-white teeth completed the picture, and he just looked at her. Moving away from the window, he whispered, That's enough. Let your smile shine for the rest of the evening, and I will hate them. Etienne went to the backyard. He didn't know why. Even he didn't understand. He just stood there and looked at the stone wall. Suddenly, something touched his leg. It became heavier, and for a moment he was speechless, as if he had been robbed of the gift of speech. It was a snake. A slow, elegant predator crawled up his leg, looking for a place to bite. A merry-go-round spun in his head. He seemed to be falling into another reality, where there were no laws or boundaries. Everything had changed. Joanna slowly approached and said, "Etienne, Etienne, come here. Let's play." Her nightgown was barely hanging on her shoulders, so thin that it seemed ready to fall apart at the slightest movement. It was like a dream. They were both almost naked. She slowly ran her hands over his shoulders and whispered, "I'm so lonely. Take my hand and kiss me." As if under hypnosis, he reached for her lips. There was no guilt, no doubt, nothing holding him back. When she threw him down in the grass, she said, "Hold me, Etienne." Her arms wrapped around his neck, her knees rested on his legs, pulling him even closer. The distance between them was melting so rapidly that it seemed that in a moment they would merge into one. Etienne still realized that this would not happen in reality, but now he could, and more than anything else, he wanted to. Joanna whispered seductively, "Do you think I haven't noticed the way you look at me? The way you devour me with your eyes every time we're together? Why do you make that face when I know how much you want to hold me?" Damn it. Her words were like a signal, like a green light at an intersection, like a door to the forbidden that suddenly opened, and all the thoughts that seemed like a fantasy became closer to reality than ever. The guy slowly took her face in his hands, looking intently at her reaction, and then he kissed me. Gently at first, and then his touch became more insistent, hotter, like a rising wave. It felt like nothing he'd ever experienced before. Etienne had never known anything like this before, but damn it was damn sweet. They continued to kiss, losing the boundaries between their bodies, which were flashing with desire. The guy whispered, "Lady, you belong to me and no one else. Joanna, tell me why you have appeared now, when I have lost everything." He gently laid her on her back, leaning over her, watching her every move, waiting for a response. This dialogue could have resolved their internal conflict, but like in a dream, everything is allowed here, whatever the heart desires. John replied, "You don't understand anything, you fool. I want you. I want you completely. I asked you to take my hand and kiss it." Her delicate fingers slid first over his palm, then touched his lips, gently, from top to bottom. Another kiss, this time more passionate, hotter. Etienne had dreamed of it, longed for it, and everything that followed seemed like an enveloping fog. Her arms clutched his burning body, and it was the best moment of his life. He said, "My lady, do you need someone like me? I can't imagine how lucky I am that you have fallen in love with me." The girl rolled onto her stomach and felt strong arms squeezing her waist firmly but gently, gentle but powerful at the same time. He added, "There is no lonelier person in this estate than you, and whoever you choose, no one will ever be as close to you as I am. So, my lady, you have nothing to fear." His body burned, begging for more. But why did Etienne want it so badly? Why did he care? Why did he want John so badly? He whispered, "You just have to come and lie down in my arms." His hands clasped her body, which was gradually getting colder, and an icy shiver ran down her legs, and the world around her lost its serenity. The next moment he swung sharply. Joanna was lying on the ground, dead. Blood was spreading under her body, and Etienne's snow-white shirt was covered with bloody spots. It was just a snake. Could it really evoke such images? Lord, something was definitely wrong in this place. Or maybe it was my mind that was starting to go. Swinging again, he shouted, "Do you think my feelings for John are a mistake? You are deeply mistaken." Meanwhile, in Eli's office, Count Noah spoke. "So she has been living here all these 17 years? To be honest, I feel sorry for your sister." Eli did not understand where this reaction was coming from. Jonah was isolated, self-taught, and had no contact with men other than servants. At times it seemed to Noah that he was exaggerating, but then he said, "Does she happen to have a lover?" It was a strange question, but Eli dismissed the suspicion. Joanna had been raised like a gray mouse, and she would not have come close to a man until she was of age. It seemed as if she had grown up in a monastery where even the thought of a man was considered shameful lust, and she would have been punished for it. It was hard to imagine her having any intimacy with anyone at all. But something about this conversation made Noah frown, and with barely concealed anger, he took a step toward Eli. Then Noah said with an ironic smile, "Do you really think I'm naive? I can tell by your sister that this is not the first time she has danced with men. She's very good at it." Eli tried to smooth things over, saying that John had been taught by the best women in high society, and that was why she was so graceful. After all, who would marry a provincial girl from Regvel? She didn't even have any friends. What kind of communication with men could there be? For everyone, she remained a silent, shadowy daughter of Count Eugene, who was kept under lock and key in the estate and not allowed to go beyond the family garden. But Noah did not believe it. He felt that this girl was not as simple as she seemed. In his eyes, every little thing turned into a threat, every look into a potential lie. He measured trust in percentages and did not forgive even a shadow of doubt.